Before we start this show, just a word from our sponsor, 20 by 20 Apparel. Founded in 2015, 20 by 20 Apparel brings original tributes to pro wrestling's classic arenas, moments, and events. They look to spotlight the bloopers, bleeps, and body slams along with the biggest, smallest, strangest, and strongest that pro wrestling has had to offer. Along with their awesome line of pro wrestling apparel, they do offer many services. In the world of wrestling, there are hundreds of shirts, promotions, flyers, social media accounts, and ads. Don't get lost in the sea of parody shirts and display fonts. They can provide professional graphic design services at a reasonable price. 20 by 20 also hand screen prints all the tees in-house. If you would like to discuss possible run of tees, posters, koozies, foam fingers, or whatever, drop them a line. Go to 20 by 20 Apparel. That's the number 20x, the number 20 apparel.com. Now, let's get to the show.
Fresh is the word.
I'm Jim Duggan, got long wood for plenty hoes. I keep it fresher than fresh, but you already know. You suckers bummy, I'm money, I got a ton of flows. My weed loud like a motherfucking thunder roll. Your shit quiet like you ballin' on a budget though. We see your kicks and we laugh and yellin' what are those. You see me shining like a suit on puffy. You know my grindin' shit is too strong, buddy. That's why the dude call money. I be stuntin' like it's nothing at all. Cause it's nothing to me, it's probably something to y'all. Trying to smoke like me, then come and fuck with your dog. Got a closet full of kicks, you can't cop it tomorrow. And I'm fresher than the freshest, you can tell it's in my essence. Bitch, you see the way I'm rapping, yes I do this shit to death. Until I'm running out of breath, or tell somebody cut a check. But either way you know it's fresh, and either way you know it's fresh. Fresh, we fresh. Fresh, fresh, goddammit, we fresh.
Welcome to the Fresh is the Word podcast. I'm your host, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier. And on Fresh is the Word, we like to deliver wisdom through great stories from the minds of bright creatives of pop culture. Through those stories, we like to dissect the journey of our guests and present actionable lessons and advice for our listeners, no matter what career or avenue of artistry they pursue. And before we get into this episode, I want to give a shout out to Knox Money, Bang Belushi, and Foul Mouth for the theme music for Fresh is the Word. And if you would like to support the podcast, you can always go to freshesthepodcast.com and just share any of the links for any of the episodes on any of your social media platforms. And also, you can subscribe to Fresh is the Word pretty much anywhere that podcasts are streamed. And that includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, pretty much everywhere. And please rate and review, especially on Apple Podcasts. It will definitely help out the show. If you want to contact me, you can always reach me by email at djkfresh@gmail.com, or you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at kfreshisthe.word, and on Facebook at facebook.com/kfresh. And you can also follow Fresh is the Word on Twitter at FreshIsTheWord, and that's is with an IZ, Instagram at Fresh is the Word Podcast, and Facebook at facebook.com/FreshIsThePodcast. And this is episode 133, and on this episode, we hit the time machine and take it back to the early 20th century with our guest, Marion Fontaine, pro wrestler and owner of the vintage-themed wrestling promotion out of Norwalk, Ohio, Olde Wrestling. This promotion is more than just a wrestling event, as the fans and the performers alike step back in time for a fun-filled, family-friendly show that also includes a ringmaster, a ragtime band, newsies, carnival-style exhibits, and more old-timey entertainment. Olde Wrestling will be coming here to Detroit on March 30th at the Detroit City Distillery Whiskey Factory. And during our chat, Marion Fontaine talked about the beginnings of the vintage-style promotion and how they gained popularity, keeping an authenticity to the show, what to expect at an Olde Wrestling show, some of his favorite old-timey gimmicks over the years, and his own career as a wrestler. And in conjunction with the Olde Wrestling event coming to Detroit, and along with one of their sponsors and one of our sponsors, 20 by 20 Apparel, we're doing a prize pack giveaway on Instagram for all sorts of great goodies from both companies. From Olde Wrestling, you'll get a show DVD, a variety pack of stickers, a button, and an 8x10 photo featuring Matt Cross and Judge Hugo. Plus a few fun gimmicks from 20x20 apparel, including some stickers, a pen, and their Chic Blood pencil. So all you need to do is go to Instagram.com/freshofthewordpodcast, and you'll see a post that says Olde Wrestling in Detroit prize pack giveaway. And all you need to do is just follow the directions for that on that post, and you'll be good to go. And we'll announce a winner on March 26th. The giveaway is only valid on Instagram, and the contest is open to everybody. So good luck. Before we get into this interview with Marion Fontaine from Olde Wrestling, I just want to remind you that I did just set up a Patreon account at patreon.com/freshastheword. And what is Patreon, you might ask? Patreon is a place where fans can support the creators they care about on an ongoing basis. In exchange for your support, you'll get some cool perks and rewards in exchange. Your support helps to cover the cost of running the podcast and keeping the show on the air. And you might ask, how does it work? All you need to do is go to patreon.com/freshastheword, and you'll be able to pledge a couple bucks each month in support of the podcast. You also have access to perks like shoutouts, your name on the website, a Twitter follow, interview audio archives, podcasting tips, and all sorts of other digital goodies. And for some of the higher tiers, you can even be a part of the show. So just go to patreon.com/freshastheword and check out all the tiers that you can support the podcast. I think the coolest one is for just $3 a month. $3 a month. You'll get access to all sorts of digital goodies, including the twice a month Patreon-only podcasts that will feature interviews from my audio archives, from my many years of music journalism. And who might that be? Who might those interviews be with? Well, I already announced the first one that's coming up, and that's going to be an interview from June of 2008 from Detroit hip-hop MC Danny Brown. The other people on the list that you could possibly see interviews with on the Patreon-only episodes is Ma Dukes, Jay Dilla's mother, Tech9, Josh Wink, OC, Carl Craig, Chino Moreno from the Deftones, Scott Ian from Anthrax, Carlo from the Butcher Babies, Violent J and Shaggy Tudo from ICP, Randy Bly from Lamb of God. I still have to go through all my archives, but I have so many audio interviews that I could drop on these Patreon-only podcasts. And that will start this coming week, hopefully, the first episode with Danny Brown. But that will be only for the people who sign up for the $3 a month Patreon tier at patreon.com/freshastheword. All right, enough of that. Let's get on to the interview with Marion Fontaine of Olde Wrestling. I first heard about Olde Wrestling through my friends who run the 20x20 apparel clothing line that are going to be the co-sponsors of the Detroit show coming up on March 30th at the Whiskey Factory in Detroit. And when I went on, they were like, "This is awesome," and I'm like, so I when I saw the stuff online, I was like, "Oh, this is a great idea for a wrestling company." How did that first get started?
Well, I've been wrestling at that point. Well, we started Olde Wrestling in 2013, and I'd probably been wrestling for about, let me think. Trying to do my math really quickly here. Probably been wrestling for 7 or more years or something like that, somewhere around there.
Right.
7 or 8 years. And I kind of changed my character from, I was this kind of flashy, over the top, almost 70s kind of throwback-ish character. And so I've been doing that for a while and kind of wanted to refresh things a little bit. And so a buddy of mine sent me a video of a Heineken commercial, and it was this guy with a handlebar mustache, because I've always had a mustache. At least while wrestling, not since birth or anything, but he sent it to me, and it was about a guy that had a mustache, and he just wasn't fitting in these like normal scenes through life, these normal settings. And then all of a sudden he finds himself in a bare knuckle boxing ring, and he fits right in, and he's like, oh, this is what your character should be. And so I was like, oh yeah, at that time, which was maybe like 2010 or 11, I didn't really see that many like vintage type characters, and I was like, oh, this might be kind of cool and interesting. So I started playing this bare knuckle boxer character, and was doing that for about 2 or so years or something. And I wanted to run a wrestling show near my hometown in northern Ohio, near Sandusky.
Okay.
And I wanted to make it kind of special, though. I just didn't want to do another show like here's a couple matches, here's a couple wrestlers that and just do something formulaic. I was like, oh, what could I do to make this different? And Chikara had always been, or at least for the last 5 or so years, had always been an inspiration for what they could do as far as bringing in fantasy and in all these different elements.
Right.
And so I was talking with my girlfriend, and she was like, you're not the only character that's like a throwback. There are these other people out here, like a Dasher Hatfield, a Thunder Kitty. All these people play old characters, and you like, vintage, old things. My parents deal in antiques. So she's like, what if we did like a vintage wrestling show? And I was like, yeah, I think that's the thing. That's the way we could, be a little bit different than what is the norm. And it kind of spun off from there. The original idea was to only do one show. And here we are. This is going to be year 7, and we're debuting in a new state and city in Detroit. And it's pretty amazing how it's grown so fast, and how much people have really clinged on. It's been amazing.
Are you still wrestling?
Yeah, I am still wrestling. Yeah, I'm still at it. So I'm trying to get the math here off the top of my head, but this is 2019, so this would be my 15th year in wrestling. Yeah, okay. I think so. 15th year that I've been doing it. So I'll do all the prep and planning for the show, but then I'll also have kind of a limited role and wrestle when old wrestling comes to Detroit.
What's the name of your old-timey character?
It's the handlebar haberdasher, Marion Fontaine. So very kind of bare knuckle boxer type character with very similar gear and sash and all that.
Right.
Although, I kind of painted myself into a corner because we try to not have any closed fists in matches because that would be illegal. So I really painted myself into a corner with my character.
Well, maybe like, maybe you're like the, the bad guy, and you might slip in a one or two here and there.
Right. Yeah. Right. Or, someone gets me angry enough,
What was the,
I've got no other way to resort.
Right. You're the rule breaker. You're like, no.
Right.
But, what was the reaction after that first show that you did, even when you just thought you were going to just do this one-off?
I think from, I guess, the community as far as the area, they didn't really know what to think because it wasn't it's not a very large town. Like it has been a wrestling town for quite a while as far as just, local outfits coming through. So there's definitely a audience that is familiar with local indie wrestling. And over the years, they've definitely come to enjoy it. I think after the first one, they were like, yeah, this is cool. This is interesting. We come to another one. And so that was, we got a good reaction from that. We got a great reaction from people online that couldn't attend the show that really just wanted to see what this was. Like when we put a DVD out, they couldn't wait to see, what the matches were, how the style was, commentary, the aesthetic, all those things. So we had a great response online, and then probably the best response that I got that I'm proud of is the performers and the wrestlers probably loved it more than anyone else. And so they were the ones that were like, you got to keep doing this. You got to keep this thing going. This is different, and we have, like, all these guys love wrestling, obviously, but they many wrestlers, men and women, will just talk about how much fun they have on these shows, which is great to hear, that we're just, out there having fun, because I think the audience can tell how much fun we're having.
For, somebody who's never been or never seen a old wrestling show, what would they, expect from the show? What would they be seeing if they were in attendance?
Wow. Well, the closest thing I could say, I mean, if you're a wrestling fan, it's probably equal parts pro wrestling, Harlem Globetrotters, Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus. It's kind of all that, Cirque du Soleil, all that stuff kind of wrapped into one. It is a wrestling show, first and foremost. So that, that's the basis of it. But, from the characters that we have, whether it's, a snake oil salesman, he may have a magic elixir that, leaves an opponent's feet like tied to them, like stuck to the mat. We've done things where, like, we've had matches where a guy was in a wheelchair the whole time because his legs had been paralyzed from taking a body slam. And we also even had Tracy Smothers wrestle a bear, quote unquote, one time. So yeah, it really is all over the place. But we do keep everything, or we try to keep everything around kind of a 20s aesthetic, so we'll have moonshiners, we have old time weightlifters, you've got politicians that are trying to influence or bring back prohibition. They're trying to make sure that, all alcohol is illegal. You've got RJ City, who is a silent film actor. He's a silent movie actor. So all of the characters revolve around the Roaring 20s. You've got gangsters too, because it was, if you look back, even if you're not a big history buff, it was a pretty prolific time where a lot of things were happening, and a lot of a lot of those characters are still prominent, whether it's like TV, movies, all that stuff. So it was a time period that we thought would be pretty fun, and we've gotten a lot of great characters out of it.
What's the sort of process of coming up with for the characters for each one of these wrestlers? Do they have ideas about what they want to do and they pitch it to you, or what happens?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways that we've done it over the years. I know when I started, there was some people that already had kind of vintage characters, so then they pretty much are just themselves.
Right.
It's not a lot, but there are a handful. Like, one off the top of my head I mentioned a little bit earlier was Thunder Kitty, who plays a very grizzled, old-time female wrestler, grappler, and she works as that, which is great to be able to just, that's your character. But then there are other people who have had suggestions in the past, and I'm trying to think. I can't think of any off just the top of my head, but there are some that are like, hey, I think this would be a good idea for a character, and we'll go from there. And then other ones are just like, hey, right now I have a list of potential characters, and I just don't know who they fit. Sometimes I try and get them to match the character in some way. Like, an example would be Space Monkey, who is, like, okay, how is Space Monkey going to work in the 1920s, But I tried to find kind of a common thread, like, all right, so like the monkey, and, back around the turn of the century, even earlier, but probably into the maybe even 30s, you would have street performers, and you would have an organ grinder, and the organ grinder would have a monkey that would dance, and he would have like cymbals, and he would dance for money. And so I was like, okay, we can do Space Monkey. Space Monkey can now be Cymbal Monkey. So then when he's Cymbal Monkey. So there's a couple different ways the characters, kind of come up. Some are actually come right out of history. My buddy Jason plays Babe Ruth, and we just say Babe Ruth is here. Yeah, he'll be there at Detroit. He'll be there Detroit with his Yankee cap on, and then my other buddy plays former President William Howard Taft, and he just comes out as so. There are characters that are plucked straight out of history. Other ones we kind of alter a little bit. So we kind of have fun with history a little bit in that sense.
And I like how you kind of tweak some of the names, like you have someone like Matt Cross. You know, no one's named Matt back then. It's Matthew Cross.
Right. Yes. Yep.
So I like
those
that.
little things. Yeah. Same way with Greg Iron. He's Gregory Iron.
Right.
We had Zach Gowan a couple of years ago do a show, and it was Zachariah. So for those little tweaks like that make it noticeable. Fans like you, because that was my intention. So the hope is that fans are able to like notice that and be like, oh yeah, that's a cool, just slight tweak, but yeah, Matthew Cross.
Right. And like you mentioned before with RJ City, he's RJ Metropolis.
Right. Yeah, that's another one. Yeah.
That's another great little tweak of the names.
Mm-hmm.
Who have been some of your favorite wrestlers to come through Olde Wrestling, and was there like a favorite sort of gimmick, 20s gimmick that you've had thus far?
I think he's probably everyone's favorite character, and he unfortunately won't be at the Detroit show just because he is actually going to be touring Japan again.
Yeah.
But Ricky Shane Page plays a Southern judge called Judge Hugo Lexington Black, and he plays a very like high-pitched Southern voice, Southern judge that is. You have to see it to believe it. If you know Ricky Shane Page, or if you followed his career in recent years, he's definitely been known for some of the death matches that he's done, from like CZW to Mid-South to going to Big Japan, and all these Fight Club Pro. But when he's at Olde Wrestling, it's a complete 180. It's comedy. It's his promo skills. It's just his mannerisms. It's completely different than what you would ever see. And I always tell people it speaks to his ability to go from one end of the spectrum to the other and do both incredibly well. So he is my favorite character that we've done for sure. He's probably he's come up with some of the best moments too. He was the one that was wrestling. He wrestled a couple matches in his wheelchair, and then after he got out of the wheelchair, he wrestled a couple with a cane, and they were super entertaining. And he gets it. He understands what the mission is for his character, and he's definitely probably up there. There are a lot of other favorites that I have, but I think, in terms of the locker room and probably the fans, he's the one that people are always excited to see or even boo, interact with. And there was another one that I did really enjoy, but he only got to wrestle one show, and that was the remarkable Billy Rock. And Billy Rock is the person who trained Ruby Riott, formerly Heidi Lovelace. And he was an amazing wrestler from Indiana, and he was a World of Sport guy, so he knew all kinds of holds, kind of in the same vein of like a William Regal,
right,
along those lines. And so he played kind of a magician character, and he would put people into holds. He could get out of any hold, and we only got to do it the one time because he ended up retiring, I think, the next year. But he's one that I wish we could have done a few more matches with. Only if so we could have sawed someone in half during a match. That was my goal, was to have someone get sawed in half by Billy Rock mid-match. So
That's great. How is there anybody on your radar that you haven't had wrestle in the company that you would love to, that you feel would be perfect?
Yeah, there have been. There's been some people that I've reached out to and pitched some ideas to. I know that one that we may want to do eventually, but I haven't found people to, because now what we see is, some of my friends, people that I've wrestled with, now they're, signing with NXT, or they're signing with, some other companies like a Ring of Honor. And a few years ago, when Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae were still on the indie scene, I wanted them to be Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh,
and I was like, this would be a perfect, you are a couple. This is a perfect timeline. I've known Johnny since we both pretty much started. So, and it just didn't work out because he was, so busy, and they both were so busy. So unfortunately that one didn't get to work out. There's some others out there too, that there are certain characters that I do want to make sure happen at some point. Let me think of some other ones off the top of my head. There was an idea for kind of a crooked mayor, almost like a Mayor Quimby type of character that we've talked about doing for some time. Like a newspaper tycoon has also been a character that's been pitched to me. So there are definitely some more ideas out there that we do want to try and explore. I'm trying to think if there's been... Oh, another one. When I was talking about Cymbal Monkey, the original idea for Cymbal Monkey was to have an organ grinder with him. So, an organ grinder, when they would perform on the street, they would kind of have a strap around their neck, and the organ, the grinder, they would crank it, and it would kind of be in front of them, right around their kind of like chest and waist, and it would be this big kind of box with a pedestal underneath it. And so you would like grind it. And so I was trying to think of someone like, what's that wrestling character now? And so the original idea, it didn't work out, unfortunately, was to have DJ Z play that organ grinder, because, he's a DJ now, but maybe back in the 20s, he would have been playing music on the street with his, dancing monkey. And so, normally when I pitch these ideas, guys are pretty excited. I know DJ Z was excited to do it. So it's hopefully one day we'll be able to get them together and do it on a show.
Throughout the years that you've been doing that, how do you feel like the company has progressed?
I think we don't do many shows per year. So there's not a lot of trial and error in the ways that maybe another company, if they're running, say, monthly, they can kind of do a hindsight check pretty soon thereafter. Like, okay, hey, we got a show next month. These are the things we thought we could do better. Let's try something new. So our shows, we're not doing as many a year, and so I feel we've had to kind of make sure we're hitting the nail on the head almost every time, because, we're going to do the show in Detroit. The earliest we'll probably be back in Detroit is next year, if knock on wood, everything goes well this year. And the same thing for some of the other shows, because we usually don't do too many shows. Maybe, I think last year we did maybe 5, but that includes kind of like being a part of certain outdoor festivals. So I think what we've been able to do after those very first couple shows is really progress and find our footing in what kind of style the show is wrestled in. It's not modern in the sense of a lot of the things that you might see on a current wrestling show from, like a Canadian Destroyer, or even going to the top rope multiple times. It's definitely more reminiscent of like a 70s, 80s style. So I think we've definitely progressed, and all the guys, for the most part, have done multiple shows. And so they've been able to really invest in the characters over the years and really understand what they're able to do for these audiences. So I think it's really the past 2 or 3 years, we've really been able to just put out some good shows, because everyone's been doing this style for a couple of years now and really is understanding these alternate vintage characters that they've been portraying. And I think with the advent of, new streaming services, I think we've also been able to get our name out there to some people that might not have known who we were previously.
Yeah, talk more about that in regards to the streaming service
Sure.
avenue and how that has been able to help out with the old wrestling company.
Yeah. When we started, there wasn't really any streaming necessarily. I mean, Smart Mark Video, you could stream on their site. I think you can still do it to this day, where you just pay for a show and then you can stream it. But there weren't any services out there like Fight TV, High Spots, what we're on, which is independentwrestling.tv. They weren't out there those first, probably the first 5 years or so. And so we relied a lot on DVD sales, which we still do sell DVDs. The numbers kind of go down as the popularity of these streaming services increase. But the good thing about the streaming services is that you're working with a lot of other they could be more popular, equally popular, less popular, but regardless, you're working with all these other independent promotions, and they're telling their fans to come to this site, whether it's subscribing, getting a promo code for a free trial. And then if it's something that their fans are interested in, it's likely that they'll eventually stumble upon some of our stuff. And we wouldn't necessarily get that when we're selling DVDs out ourselves to our already built-in audience. So those streaming services are really helping as far as giving us an opportunity to be in front of some new faces. And I feel that it's, only going to gain more popularity as technology advances. I think the streaming services that are out there are just going to get more and more popular with independent wrestling fans.
I know, I've always noticed that with the visuals for the flyers and just the wrestler announcements, it's a really slick, really nice, design. How important is it to have a good look, good production value for your product?
Yeah, you really can't put a price on it. It's before anyone can experience the show, or for first time people or for returning fans, that's the first thing that they might be seeing, and so you've got to wow them right off the bat. And we try to keep a certain aesthetic. We want to still make it feel kind of old timey, vintage. Some of the times we'll pull inspiration from old posters, whether it's like 50s or 60s, and then sometimes we'll pull some stuff from kind of popular culture. The Detroit show is pulled from the Great Gatsby movie with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh,
so
yeah.
if you look at that poster from maybe the movie came out like 8 years ago or something like that, or 5 years ago, I was like, oh, this is perfect. We haven't done this kind of style before, so let's pay tribute to it and put it in the wrestling, put it in our wrestling template. And so because we try to be unique too, and we don't want to be like the formulaic flyer that you might see for any other wrestling show. It's trying to be as different and unique every chance we get. So it's definitely appreciated when people notice the way we're presenting the graphics.
When people go to an old wrestling show, what sort of things are available there, merch wise or whatever, for them, other than the wrestling show itself?
Oh yeah, well, this Detroit show is going to be bananas. First off, it's going to like This isn't at every show normally, but this is the first time we're doing some of these things, and we're pretty excited about it. So the Berkeley Chop Shop, which is a great barbershop, old school kind of barbershop, they're going to be cutting people's hair at the event. So if you need like a trim, they will trim you up so you make sure that you look good at the old wrestling show. They're bringing the old school barber chair and everything.
Awesome.
Super awesome. I'm very stoked. If I am not looking good, I'm going to try and see if I can get a cut too. So they'll be there. There's a beard care product company out of Mount Clemens called Can You Handle Bar. They're going to have a photo booth there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so we always encourage fans to dress up, and we get a nice amount of people at every show. that will dress up in some way. And we think the photo booth is only going to kind of help that and capture the moment for those people. And then our live band, who we have usually at least once every year, they're from Toledo. So this is probably the closest show that we've done to them. And so the live band plays the wrestlers out to the ring and back, after the winner is determined. So there's live music. There's going to be cocktails by the Detroit City Distillery. So that's all the other things that are kind of happening around the show that really kind of round it off for a fun night. Merchandise-wise, we try and have some interesting items, but a lot of the standards that you would see, from like T-shirts to like DVDs, and we take a lot of the same care in the graphics online as we do on the DVDs. We take a lot of time and effort to make sure that the DVD packaging is like no one else's. So that's another thing that we try and stand out. But we'll do some old vintagey even kind of pieces of merch. And one of the popular ones have been pennants. So we'll have like little pennants that people can wave in the crowd. So we'll do those from time to time. Buttons and pens and stickers, a lot of small things too, and photo booklets. We'll try and make photo booklets for a number of the shows. All kinds of old wrestling stuff. A couple of years ago, we gave out wooden nickels. So there's all kinds of stuff.
Great. That sounds awesome. When anybody who goes to a old wrestling show, what do you want them to leave thinking and feeling?
Oh, that's an amazing question. I think for anyone, whether you're an avid wrestling fan or if you're a big follower of old wrestling or independent wrestling, or even if you just happen to walk in, I just want to be able to show all of those people that wrestling can be a form of performance art that any age can really enjoy. When it's done well, people from kids that are 10 years old to adults that are 60 years old, they all can be in one place, enjoy the show, have a great time, laugh together, boo together. They can all experience this holistic performance in a way that you can't do with any kind of form of entertainment. There's only certain kinds of atmosphere that you can maybe get these reactions from people of different ages, races, genders, all that. And I think when people see an old wrestling show, I guess I'd also want them to think, how do we go see another one? How do we come back and go see another one? But we really just want to provide an environment and experience that everyone can enjoy. And that's not just the fans, it's all the people involved too.
Awesome. Before we get out of here, where can people go online to get more information about old wrestling? And also, can you tell us more information about the Detroit show coming up?
Yeah, pretty easy to find stuff with old wrestling online. I always tell people it's old with an E, so OLDE, oldwrestling.com. And then all of the social media handles are the same. Twitter.com/oldwrestling, Instagram, Facebook. We're pretty on a daily cadence of updates, whether it's from talent, talking about sponsorships, some of the other things. So follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. We're always trying to post all kinds of different imagery, whether it's taken at our shows or just historic 1920s era imagery on the Instagram. So there's always some great photos and content on there. And the event is going to be taking place at Detroit City Distillery's Whiskey Factory. So it's pretty much right downtown. I did not know Detroit all that well. I'd been there, been around the suburbs, but the venue is the old Stroh's Ice Cream Factory. Right. It's really close to Ford Field. It's in a pretty interesting and cool neighborhood, really close to the Eastern Market area, which I went to last weekend for the first time.
Right.
And it's a super cool space. It's probably the coolest space we've had a show at. It's a very old, rustic factory. They actually have a lot of weddings there. So I don't know if they know what they're getting into with wrestling for this one, but yeah, it's an amazing space. It's a pretty popular spot and area in the city, and we're really looking forward to it. So all the information about the event, buying tickets it's general admission. Everything's $15. All of that is at oldwrestling.com. All that event info.
All right, it was great talking with you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. So that was my interview with Marion Fontaine of Olde Wrestling. Just a reminder that on March 30th at the Detroit City Distillery Whiskey Factory at 1000 Maple Street in Detroit, Michigan, Olde Wrestling will be holding a show. Doors open at 7 p.m. First bell at 7:30. You can purchase tickets at oldwrestling.com/tickets. And if you're in Detroit, you can also purchase tickets at Iconic Tattoo and Piercing at 3401 Cass Avenue in Detroit. And also remember to go to Instagram.com/FreshIsTheWordPodcast to enter into the Olde Wrestling prize pack giveaway. And like I said, winners will be announced on March 26th. All right, that was another show in the books. Thank you for listening. Goodbye and good night.
Fresh is the word.